Excuse me, sir, but I do believe you've dropped your wallet.
Doesn't look familiar to me.
What? I just saw you drop it. Here.
Nope, it's not mine.
It is yours. I am trying to be a good person and return it to you.
Return what to who?
Aren't you Patrick Starr?
Yep.
And this is your ID.
Yep.
I found this ID in this wallet. And if that's the case, this must be your wallet.
That makes sense to me.
Then take it.
It's not my wallet.
I love cheese. I love cheese. I love cheese. I love cheese so much. I love cheese so much. So give me some nom 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 nom.
What do you propose, Bob?
When in doubt, C4.
Oh. Okay. Hopefully, maybe it's working now. It wasn't me or you, either one. It was YouTube. I got a message from YouTube. They muted me for some reason. Weird. I didn't know they could do that. Either way, we are on count 5. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was looking on my end as well, and it's like it shows completely 100%. And I have a monitor feature on my Mix Create here that I can listen to see if I'm talking or not. And sure enough, I was. But then I happened to look over at the stream information, and I had an error message saying that, well, I think what happened was one of the videos I played at the very beginning before my intro, probably if I had to guess, the SpongeBob one, I didn't like it, and I got muted temporarily. So, because I got an error message about it. So anyway, that's what happened, I guess. Well, I won't be playing that one anytime soon again. Anyway, once again, we are back for Star Wars on Trial from Film Threat. This is count number 5, Demystifying the Lore. And all the links to the video as well as the court documents and stuff are all in the video description. And I would really appreciate it if you maybe like and subscribe. If not, you're more than welcome to just sit here and watch it. And I appreciate your time. But I would encourage you not only to like and subscribe my channel in this video, but also go over to Film Threat and do the same thing there as well. Because this is where I got the thing from. We're just kind of rewatching it, and I'm adding my Penguin thoughts to it. So anyway, and before you ask, what are Penguin thoughts? Well, here you go. Here's what Penguin thoughts are.
You're listening to Penguin Thoughts. These are the thoughts that penguins are thinking when they were thinking that they were thinking about the thoughts they were thinking when they were thinking them. That is, we think.
Okay, we're back. And let's get into it without further ado, because this one's about an hour and 48 minutes. But more than likely it'll probably be less than that because we like to skip around. I don't like going through necessarily the super chats. I just kind of skip that part. I'm more interested in the actual court proceedings itself. So without me yammering on any further, let's go ahead and start it. Okay, here we go. There's Alan Ng, special counsel. Oh, all rise. Honorable Judge Gore. Oops. Here's count 5. What is going on here? You can hear me, but you can't hear the video? That's really weird. It shows I've got... Let me look at something here. Pick it. Why else delayed by 15 minutes? I've had nothing but problems with tech today. My internet went down right before I needed to start. Okay. Okay, welcome back. I'm trying to figure out why it shows everything on my end is... let me see something here. I'm going to go ahead and continue playing the video. It could be. It could be something I'm fighting here with YouTube. I don't know. I do know I had trouble with my internet went down like 10 minutes before I needed to start the stream. I just don't understand what's going on. Why does it look like everything's working just fine? It even shows me playing it on my end. Yeah, that's why the 15-minute delay. I didn't even have internet. I'm really getting tired of the technical issues I'm having lately. Really starting to bother me. All right, let me try something else real quick here just to make sure. Hold on. I'm almost... All right, let me see if it works now. Hot Picket's still not going. I don't understand. One moment, let me restart my software for my audio. I'm going to put you on the Be Right Back screen while that's happening. Okay. That's all right. So let's see if this works now. I'm picking, I swear. Nothing but one problem after another. Can you hear me? Anybody? Good. Now tell me, can you hear the video?
Was a robot obsession and the blatant misuse of a lightsaber. That is count number 5.
Because if not,
Thank
it's
you,
YouTube.
Mr. Ng. Court is now
Okay,
because
I'd say I think all this problem was YouTube, to be honest with you, because I didn't really change anything other than restarted my mix software. But it was still showing the exact same as it was before, so I don't know. I just don't understand. Either way, we're finally underway, hopefully. Now I gotta mute it. I muted the audio for this because that song will strike me. So you aren't hearing anything on purpose. Yeah? You need to be here more often. Because there's times where I got nobody telling me anything because I got a bunch of lurkers that don't want to respond, which is fine. But when you got
now we will introduce the prosecution and the defense for
Your Honor, again, I would ask that you instruct the jury to smash that like button and subscribe. I feel like the jury has not been paying attention to your orders, and I ask that if they continue to do this, that you would hold them in contempt. That sweet, sweet embrace of contempt.
Now,
and
you
the
heard
figures
what
that happen on a day where I feel like I'm
Ng
getting
just
sick.
said. Please smash that like button. As I
after
would
all this
smash
is done,
this
I'm going to go lay
gavel
down.
over anyone's head who would not follow that instruction. Today, for the defense, we introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Mortal
Yeah,
Relic,
I hope I'm not getting sick, but I feel like it
and,
started last
I'm a
night.
member of the defense.
I'll refer to you as Mr. Relic. Next, we have Mr. Snyder. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Jesse Blaze
He's
Snyder.
wearing a bow
I'm
tie.
here to defend
Bow ties
the
are cool.
dignity of Disney Star Wars.
And also on the defense, I guess I'll just refer to you as Mr. Guy.
You can also call me by my real last name, March. That's fine.
Mr. March, thank you for joining us today.
He's with all
I
Star
just
Wars
want to
things.
say I am a true Star Wars fan, so just providing some evidence, and I have sold all my shares of Disney.
Well, we'll see how you fare. Additionally, joining us today on the prosecution, we're light on the prosecution today.
Critical Drinker.
Mr. Drinker.
Good evening, Your Honor.
And also want to introduce today our court sketch artist.
Yeah, there we go, Mr.
Blackwood. Todd Blackwood. He will be doing sketches.
Link
of
for
the
him is down in the
today,
description as
illustrating
well.
not only members of the prosecution and the defense, but also anything that is inspired by the discussion today. So thank you, Mr. Blackwood. You can follow Mr. Blackwood on, let's see, it's blackwoodpdx.com or at blackwood_pdx on Instagram. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, for your
Yeah, I got
attendance.
the link to his
I want to
website
say
in the description.
a couple of words, and before we bring on a surprise witness, we've seen members of the prosecution and the defense passionately argue their case. We'll be doing things a little bit differently today. I am bringing on a special surprise witness. This surprise witness will be available to both the prosecution and the defense to provide facts, to provide context. and to provide, most importantly, the truth. This isn't just a George Lucas impersonator. The person behind this screen is using AI chat GPT to respond precisely in the way that George would respond if George were here.
Wow.
And the first thing that I would like to do
They're using AI.
is actually swear in our witness, which is available to both members, both parties. Mr. Lucas, if I may call you that.
Sure, that's my name. Might as well.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you, George?
I, George W. Lucas Jr., do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me.
Thank you,
What?
Mr. Lucas.
Help me.
You're dismissed for now. We will keep you here within the proceedings, as we do with each trial, because this is a serious courtroom. We'll begin with the prosecution. The prosecution will present its case. We will then have an opportunity for cross-examination. The prosecution may also call the witness to the stand. Then the defense will present their case, more cross-examination, and then we will go into the open debate. During open debate, you, the jury, that's everyone watching right now, you, the jury, will then determine who you thought won today's argument in count 5. Is it the prosecution or the defense? I think that it's time for us to begin.
There we go.
Mr. Drinker, you now have the floor. Please present. Please present your argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's my intention today to prove to you beyond reasonable doubt that Star Wars under Disney is guilty of ruining its own lore. Now, the proof in this case is going to come in 2 parts. Firstly, the Disney Star Wars has, through a combination of incompetence and malevolent intent, destroyed and contradicted the existing lore and canon that was established under George Lucas. And secondly, that it has utterly failed in its own attempts to introduce new lore and canon to the point where it actually ends up contradicting itself. Now, first of all, let's consider the matter of existing lore that's been systematically destroyed and contradicted in the course of Disney Star Wars reign. First of all, I want to present to you exhibit number 1, the Force. Surely one of the most fundamental elements of Star Wars.
Yeah.
The Force in the original trilogy was a mystical energy that flowed through all living things. It was as subtle and unknowable as it was powerful and influential. It represented the very essence of life itself, with all its endless complexity and potential. It could be used to perform simple tricks like bending the mind of an enemy soldier to your will, or sensing threats without being able to see them. And in some cases, it even allowed people to move solid objects, or choke enemies without even touching them. And at the extreme end of the spectrum, in the case of people like Emperor Palpatine, it could even project lightning out of thin air. Now, the thing about the Force is that it wasn't just some convenient tool to fix every problem, or an ultimate weapon that could destroy any opponent or military force. It was supposed to be more subtle than that. But now, let's consider what the Force is capable of in the Disney Star Wars universe. Intergalactic Skype calls. Healing major injuries almost instantly. Lifting thousands of tons of rubble with no difficulty whatsoever. Barely.
Intergalactic Skype calls. He's talking about that when Luke and Leia were talking to each other through the Force in The Last Jedi. I never thought it called an intergalactic Skype call, though. Anyway.
Inconvenience, in fact. Projecting lightning powerful enough to disable entire battle fleets across hundreds of miles of space. Bringing people back from the dead. Allowing force ghosts that can now interact with the real world. They can catch solid objects. They can even summon lightning to set trees on fire. None of these things were possible before, but now they somehow are. Why? Because in the minds of Disney writers, bigger always equals better. This isn't what the Force is supposed to be. In fact, in the words of Han Solo, that's not how the Force works. Now, the other important aspect of the Force is that it required great skill and effort to learn how to use it in the first place. Even the most simple skills took great amounts of effort to master. Unless your name happened to be Rey, in which case it just kind of happens for you. Jedi have devoted their entire lives to mastering Force skills and expanding their abilities. Even Anakin Skywalker and Luke both had to train hard and struggle to gain the powers that they had.
Yep.
They failed multiple times. They made mistakes along the way, and they often suffered from it. But they also
weren't
learned
considered
from
a
it
master
too.
right away.
The light and the dark sides of the Force represented different moral pathways. The dark side offers a quick and easy route to power without the wisdom and restraint needed to wield it. And the light side represented a longer and harder, but ultimately more rewarding road. That was the essence of what the Force represented. It was a moral choice. Then we come to Disney Star Wars, and Rey. Rey is able to master, for example, mind control, telekinesis, lightsaber combat, and even Force lightning with no training, preparation, any kind of information or guidance of any sort. It just happens
just like
for
she
her.
has the
There's no
capability from the
temptation
start.
towards the dark side, which further undermines the very purpose of the Force in Star Wars. It just becomes a quick and easy route to power for Rey, without any of the temptations or downsides that come with it. All of these elements represent a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Force is, how it functions, and what it means for characters who have to deal with it. It is ultimately the destruction and desecration of the most fundamental aspects of Star Wars lore. Now I'd like to bring you along to exhibit number 2, hyperdrives. Now, up until Disney took over Star Wars, hyperdrives were a simple, easy way of getting characters from one end of the galaxy to another. They were basic, they were easy to follow rules about how they worked. You had to know where you were going, you needed a computer to plot you a safe course, and you needed a little bit of time to spool up your hyperdrive. But once that was done, you could fire it up and escape from anyone that might be chasing you. Disney Star Wars, on the other hand, destroys this lore by introducing us to the hyperspace tracker, which now makes it impossible for anyone to escape via hyperspace. Then it convolutes the situation even further and contradicts its own lore by introducing us in the following movie to hyperspace skipping, which apparently allows you to overcome the hyperspace tracker, but only if you're the best pilot in the entire universe, otherwise you're just going to crash and die. It's a constant rewriting of the rules. These movies also introduced us to hyperspace ramming, which allows you to just fire up your drive and crash a ship into another ship, obliterating it instantly.
Maneuver.
It destroys the very concept of space battles in Star Wars, because why even bother to engage in combat when you can just ram a ship straight into an enemy fleet and obliterate them at a stroke?
Yeah, pretty much.
Then, we come to the following movie, The Rise of Skywalker, which dismisses this entire thing with a simple throwaway line, claiming it was a 1 in a million shot that couldn't be replicated again. Really? I find that rather hard to believe that was a 1 in a million shot. I mean, why can't you just point your ship at an enemy and hit the hyperdrive? Can't be that hard. These same movies also introduced us other ridiculous lore-breaking concepts like cloaking devices, something that's never really been mentioned in Star Wars before.
Hyperspace goes in a straight
and then
line.
immediately it nullifies them with the concept of decloaking scans. So what's the point in even having them? Once again, Star Wars doesn't just destroy the lore of the previous trilogy, it destroys and contradicts its own lore, the things that it tries to establish, constantly rewriting the rules to fit whatever situation comes up. Exhibit number 3 I present to you is Obi-Wan Kenobi. We all remember Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's the wise mentor who guided and protected Luke in A New Hope. He was the man who fought and mortally wounded Anakin Skywalker on Mustafar before going into exile for the next 17 years. And finally, in A New Hope, he sacrifices himself to buy enough time for Luke to escape. Now, the dialogue in their final fight between between Obi-Wan and Vader, it makes it very clear this is the first time that they've met since their battle on Mustafar. But apparently it wasn't, because along came the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, which now introduces a whole other series of conflicts between the two of them. Another fight where Obi-Wan defeats Anakin, And instead of killing him, putting him out of his misery, ending a threat to the entire galaxy, he walks away and leaves him. It makes no sense, but it doesn't have to, because Disney don't care. They're all about the instant gratification. They're about giving you a quick and easy hit. Doesn't matter if it breaks the lore, and it doesn't matter if it breaks the characters. Not only does this contradict what we know from the original trilogy, it also turns his character into an idiot who makes the most basic of mistakes. He makes terrible tactical choices. He gives away Leia's name when they're in the company of stormtroopers because he doesn't think. He even allows a 10-year-old girl to lead him around. None of these additions enhance Obi-Wan's character. They destroy it, and they destroy the lore that was built around him. Finally, I bring you to exhibit number 4, Emperor Palpatine. He was the ultimate enemy of the Star Wars story in the original trilogy. He was a man who conquered the galaxy, who seduced Anakin to the dark side, and he tried to do the same to Luke, only for Darth Vader to turn against him and cause him to be blasted by his own force lightning and fall thousands of feet down a reactor shaft into the core of an exploding Death Star. Now, you might think that would leave him completely, utterly, and irrefutably dead. Nobody could survive something like that. But then we get to the Rise of Skywalker, and we find out that somehow Palpatine returned. Really? How? How do you survive that?
Very good
Because
question.
I'd like to know. So would millions of other Star Wars fans all around the world. But we don't get any explanation for it.
Nope,
it's just thrown in
happened.
there. Again, it rewrites the history, it rewrites the lore, and it tramples on everything that came before, just to give you simple gratification, something you recognize. There's no answers to this question, ladies and gentlemen, because these movies are a complete farce.
Yeah,
they make things
hardcore
up and they
fans
rewrite
ask
history as they go
questions.
along.
They are deep into the lore.
And I guess
they understand
that's
what's
not even
going
mentioning
on and
other
so
big
forth.
lore-breaking questions
And
like
obviously
how exactly
more
did
than
the
the
First
current
Order
writers
manage
do.
to construct a planet-sized Death Star ripoff with a fleet of hundreds, maybe even thousands of ships without anyone noticing? Where did they even get the resources for such a massive undertaking? Or how did the Emperor manage to build and maintain a fleet of 10,000 Star Destroyers, apparently, along with the millions of crewmen it would need to man them, and keep them sitting around for doing nothing for 30 years? Where did all the crew come from? How did they pay
Gotta
and
ask
feed
that
them?
question.
No one knows. It doesn't matter. None of this makes sense because they don't care about the lore and they don't care about logic or the history of Star Wars. They just make it up.
And they never really explain that either. in
Ladies
The
and
Rise of
gentlemen of the
Skywalker.
jury, I could sit here for days outlining all of the blatant contradictions and desecrations of Star Wars lore that Disney have inflicted upon us, but it wouldn't be necessary. It should be obvious to any fan of this franchise that modern Star Wars is a disaster in every sense of the word. Financially, creatively, and reputationally. It's a franchise limping from one disaster to another. It's barely even able to sustain the integrity of its own stories, never mind respecting or even caring about the lore that came before it. Star Wars, quite simply, is guilty. Guilty not just of demystifying and destroying its own lore, not just of blatantly contradicting and destroying its own legacy, but guilty of the biggest crime of all, being completely and utterly The prosecution rests.
Thank you, Mr. Drinker. Let's. You now have an opportunity. The defense has an opportunity to cross-examine before we move to the defense argument. If Mr. Blackwood would like to show some of the sketches, I can put you up on screen, Mr. Blackwood.
Oh, good. The best part.
Well, there you are. That's
Alan Ng.
Mr. Ng, Mr. Ng and Lizzo.
Lizzo.
So there you are.
Baby Yoda. Real good.
So, okay. Members of the defense, members of the defense, do you have any questions to cross-examine for Mr. Drinker?
I have some questions. Okay, I'm putting into the chat defense exhibit number 1.
Okay, you have to share screen so that you can show your evidence.
Oh, okay.
So
I have it on
share
Google
screen,
Edge.
Mr. March.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay. Well, what would you like? What is your question? What is your cross-examination?
Oh, well, I was going to point to a page of what is it called? I'm pointing to StarWarsFandom.com wiki, the Wills, and the fact is, according to George Lucas, the midichlorians are the ones that communicate with the Wills. The Wills, in a general sense, they are the Force. George Lucas intended the Wills to be a microscopic, single-celled life form who are essentially God, the Will, the Force, maintaining a symbiotic relationship with the midichlorians. The Wills fed off the Force and controlled the universe, offering destinies to sentients such as Anakin Skywalker, who is destined to be the chosen one of the Force, to act as a tool which balance was restored to the Force, to restore balance and harmony to all life by destroying those who violated it, would continue violating the symbiosis of life, users of the corruptive, addicted force of the dark side. Individuals were controlled by the Force's will, yet they had free will, all had a destiny if they wanted to follow it. The midichlorians were in turn symbionts with all the life. The midichlorians lived in every single cell of every living thing and communicated to living beings the will, the will, the Force.
Yeah.
This was George Lucas's ultimate decision for Star Wars. It's not an energy field. The prosecution has declared, based on the original, some of the Jedi lore, the Jedi explanation, but we have George's decision to change all of that. And
Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant. The plans that George Lucas had for the sequel trilogy were abandoned by Disney, and all of his expanded universe stuff was decanonized.
Including this.
Well, it's never been mentioned in the movies, so it's, as far as I'm concerned,
yeah,
it's
they never
inadmissible
brought
as
up
It's
evidence.
a lot more than the movies, Mr. Drinker.
Well, as we have our witness here, you can ask our witness.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Lucas, what was your intention to do with the Wills?
Well,
with your next trilogy.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that the original idea was that the midichlorians and the Wills were able to tap into the Force. I mean, that's the whole point of it. It's the biological connection to the Force, and it's a very simple concept to understand. The midichlorians and the Wills are not the Force; they can just tap into it.
Okay. But if someone was born with a very high amount of midichlorians, could they
Like
maybe
Anakin
be a
was.
Force savant, like
No problem, Tracy.
you know, Doug Hoffman and Rain Man or something with the Force?
Your Honor, what bearing does this have on my statement, the
It has
prosecution?
perfect bearing, Your Honor. A high metachlorian count could, within the possibility of canon, essentially explain every single thing that Ray does in the franchise. Thank you very much.
Now, it's my understanding that a high midichlorian count grants you Force powers, to be sure, but you have to learn how to wield them. You have to learn how to access them. That is where the training comes in.
Yes, if I may, Your Honor.
Yes, go on.
That was always my intention, that the midichlorians are able to focus the energy, but they do not transmit knowledge or ability.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
You can certainly learn from someone who is Force adept, and otherwise, young Anakin would have been the most powerful Jedi ever at the age of 7 years old.
Yeah,
Which he was. He blew up a freaking droid ship all by himself.
At 7?
I think the Starfighter that he was in with its torpedoes probably had a big part to play in that.
He would have stayed on Tatooine and not done anything.
A creative decision was made by our client to have Palpatine influencing the ultimate outcome and growth of Rey in ways that she does not know, using the dark side of the Force, which, as we all know, is very mysterious.
Well, like I said, the midichlorians do not transmit good story ideas either.
That's true, Your Honor. An omission of guilt in a small way.
Continue with the cross-examination. I'll allow it for the next few minutes, and then we will move to the defense argument.
Okay.
Just a reminder to defense that your cross-examination should be about what
he said. That's what I'm doing.
And not present your case at this point.
Right. No. I'm just. He's talking
It
about
needs to be
hyperdrive
what
weapon.
Mr. Drinker
He doesn't know what an Imperial interdiction cruiser is.
What is your point, sir?
It's all these things that were basically you're saying that we should have gone with Lucas's original vision. A lot of the stuff he proved under LucasArts hits on things like the Imperial Interdiction Cruiser. Other writers in the universe got to expand upon and do stuff with it. So your case seems to be all about the trilogy, but we have Rebels, we have, well, I'll get to that stuff later.
Sir, I can only comment on the things that I've actually seen, unfortunately.
Okay.
And the movies and the Disney Plus TV shows are the limit of my experience with this.
Okay. Well, my other situation is the final one is that you're, unfortunately, because I listened to a lot of good people who went forward and watched the show, so I didn't have to. I don't know much about Obi-Wan Kenobi. I will personally admit that. But you talked about Emperor Palpatine and how he came back. Well, I'm holding in my hand 2 copies of a Dark Horse limited run comic book. And it's called Dark Empire. And in which was proved by LucasArts, there's a whole bunch of expansions and material that went about this dark comic series from Dark Horse Comics. In it, Emperor Palpatine returns from the center of the universe, armed with a fleet of Imperial.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Technically, he can't bring expanded universe stuff into this because that's something like we talked about in Count 4 that Disney Lucasfilm had completely said that the EU was not canon, even though they co-opted some of the storylines and thoughts from the EU, like they're doing with the Ahsoka series about the heir to the Empire, which was part of the expanded universe based on a novel. But nevertheless, him bringing this up, kind of his point is kind of yeah, they want it both ways. They want to be able to say, okay, the EU is not canon, but then turn right around and use it however they want. And it doesn't work that way. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I don't know anything in life that's that way to where you can have your cake and eat it too. It just doesn't happen. And here the defense is trying to defend something against the prosecution's point about Emperor Palpatine by using Dark Horse Comics, a comic book, which is not considered canon by Disney Lucasfilm, even though under George Lucas it would be considered canon, but it's not under Disney Lucasfilm. So he's using material that, in my opinion, is not even be able to be refuted with. So let's see if, let's see if the defense or the prosecution or if Mr. Drinker here brings it up or Alan or somebody.
Star Destroyers, armed with Death Star cannons, and the only major difference between it and the start of the last movie was the fact that instead of having Luke's nephew bow down and become his new Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker bows down and becomes Emperor Palpatine's new Darth Vader. And our client clearly took that as inspiration for the movie.
Yeah, shocker there.
That was given by George Lucas's approval.
Yes, and Your Honor.
Objection, Your Honor. This is inadmissible as evidence. I don't understand what bearing this has on the case. I can't be answerable for every random comic or webisode or video game that comes up.
It's all part of Star Wars.
Yeah, it's not.
I'll allow it.
It's just very clear that the idea and decision to begin retconning Star Wars and its lore and the ideas about the Force began with George Lucas himself. And Disney has only continued to do within the parameters of what we saw as acceptable, and perhaps we went too far. But we just did what George did.
Yeah. Well, my question on this one is very simple.
I don't know if I agree with the
example
judge's
of
decision
the
on
hyperspace ram maneuver, which we saw in the Last Jedi. Do you guys all accept that if you have the ability to do that, simply crash one ship into a fleet of ships and obliterate all of them through the power of the ramming technique, that rather changes the dynamics of space battles forever within Star Wars.
In our third movie,
and not for the better.
We don't agree that
Just
employed
legitimately
all of these
thought of it.
devices properly. You know, but bad writing, I think, is a separate issue from just the lore.
Well, I guess my my argument would be that bad writing and lore breaking go hand in hand generally.
They do. Where do you think the lore breaking comes
Gentlemen, are you
from
prepared
people writing
to
the content.
present your defense argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Who will be going first?
I will.
Okay. I'm going to.
I don't know any of the
put you
guys on
full
the defense.
screen,
I've
Mr.
watched
Relic,
some of Critical Drinker
as we-
stuff before.
As you please begin. And there are 3 of you, so time will be kept. We've about 20 minutes or so for you to present your argument. So be mindful that you have other members of your defense.
I'll go last, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Please continue, but be mindful of the time.
Okay. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. At the heart of this case is a question of intention. Did Disney Lucasfilm, with malice of forethought, kill the Star Wars franchise, or was it a case of incompetence and bad decision-making that does not rise to the level of premeditation? We will show that nefarious elements inside Disney Lucasfilm did, in an attempt to appease disparate factions of the Star Wars fandom, end up pleasing no one and pissing everyone.
Okay. Mr. Snyder?
Hello. How are we all doing?
Is that all, Mr. Relic?
Okay. Yes, I'll hand it over to the
Okay, Mr. Snyder.
It's like we didn't know if the defense was
Well,
done.
Your
or not.
Honor, we would like to submit to the jury, to you, Judge, that the lore was already broken when we got it, and we saved you all from worse. And at the time that the franchise was changing hands, we were taking the temperature of the room, and the room was saying to us that you were no longer interested in the creativity of one George Lucas. We thought that the fans were done with George's ideas, and they wanted somebody to remove Star Trek from his Star Wars, from his control,
Trek,
and try to recreate the things that they cared about in the franchise, which was what we tried to do. So to present this first argument here, I have a number of exhibits, and Exhibit A is South Park episode from season 12, episode 8, The China Problem.
I've never watched South Park, so I don't know anything about it.
Do you have the clip?
I have the clip. I'm not too sure. Let me get it here.
Objection, Your Honor. South Park is not on trial here.
Star something.
Excuse me, Mr. Snyder. Excuse me. We're not going to be able to show the clip with audio. We're going to get copyright struck for that.
I think we can do a description of what happened, Your Honor.
As a serious defense attorney in this case, you would already know that. But please, you're welcome to describe the scene. We will trust that it is accurate. Please continue, Mr. Snyder.
Yeah.
Well, in this episode,
he's losing it.
Where
you want me to describe it?
We see Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, architects of the travesty that was Indiana Jones 4. And I don't want to go into great detail, but there's a lot of mounting and a lot of thrusting. And suffice to say, Indiana Jones did not enjoy the experience. This was a message to us, the strongest one yet, and I'm going to give you a list of messages that we received that the fandom had felt that the intellectual property created by Mr. George Lucas was being handled inappropriately.
My profanity filter and the closed captioning,
the remaking of
combination
the
of
original
the
trilogy,
two makes this a little bit
edits to the
interesting to
original
watch.
cut.
Travis King.
Greedo
I don't know what that
shoots
is.
First, are these the creative decision making of a sane person? Exhibit C. We've got
This is how I watch Netflix and
greenlit
stuff.
books from the
And sometimes
EU, the
watching an
extended universe
episode on
that
something
are
on
terrible.
Netflix or whatever,
Some of
it's
the
even
last
more
releases in
funny
the
or
comic
hilarious
sphere that had the
because
name
of
Star Wars
the
on them
class
were
coach,
terrible.
the
People
closed
hated them. The
captioning or
fans
the
hated
profanity
them.
filter.
People were not trusting what George Lucas had in mind for the franchise. Exhibit D, Jar Jar Binks, and the disappointment that was the Phantom Menace. Is this what we were expecting? No, we were all very disappointed. The entire prequel trilogy. Producers were criticized for giving George Lucas what? Too much creative control. Exhibit E, Howard the Duck.
It was
all
all
of the
his.
fans of Steve Gerber out in the audience. We can
Too
all
much
throw up
creative
together.
control. Yeah, George
This
Lucas
film is
was
another
in
thing we
control
look to when determining
during
whether
the
or
prequels.
not to take the advice of one Mr. George Lucas. Again, the fans' reaction to this work seemed to tell the executives at Disney that we absolutely should not, under any circumstances, allow Mr. Lucas to continue to rape the beloved franchises that were in his possession. Exhibit F, the Ewoks. Perhaps the pivotal George Lucas jump the shark moment. The Ewoks. In Return of the Jedi, the Ewoks proved, just from the original trilogy, that not all
Good
of
old
George's
Howard
ideas
Duck.
were good ones. Ewoks were perhaps the earliest fan lament about George Lucas's decision-making. The Ewoks had additional appearances as well, and we all know how those all stink. The erosion of the faith that was given to Mr. Lucas for Star Wars and other classic films began to erode with Ewoks. The Ewoks made us all doubt. Your Honor, because of all these reasons, we feel as though the fandom is being too hard on Disney Star Wars. We wish that the audience could see the creative choices we made away from George Lucas was done with love for the audience who we thought wanted to see the vibe of the original trilogy. So argument number 2, we're giving the thrill of a new hope to a new generation. That's what we were trying to do. That's what we thought you wanted. We weren't privy to all of the things that the fans were privy to. Our clients are film executives. And the one thing that they knew they could do was recreate a new hope and give the fans, hopefully, a new hope. And there is proof within the films, and I will give that to you. Exhibit A, Star Wars The Force Awakens was and remains a love letter to a new hope, opening the door for some fresh faces to play in the sandbox. The film is beautifully cast by J.J. Abrams, who does that good, by the saboteur J.J. Abrams. I'm sorry, I should reframe. And lovingly, it rings as many of the original bells as possible in an attempt to bring a new generation with this coming-of-age story. Exhibit B, we acknowledge the franchise saboteur Rian Johnson's offering includes many subtle digs at the fans that we did not realize were meant in this way at the time. We were forced on things that we and many others loved about The Last Jedi. We were focused on all of the great, inspiring rebel iconography that is in The Last Jedi that fans love so much. We loved it too, and we were distracted. And we have a list of the 10 great things about The Last Jedi, because this is so often, things are said that these aren't good. In the first film, we attempted to implant the fans into the Star Wars universe through the Stormtroopers. The Stormtroopers have personality, just like all
Objection, Your Honor, on the grounds of absolute insanity.
What are you saying? The Stormtroopers have had personality as cosplayers for many years.
Mr. Snyder, just a moment. Mr. Snyder, you remind me of another attorney I've dealt with, a Mr. Foghorn Leghorn. But let me also just say, I asked you.
Hey, hold up a second.
Now, I asked you at the beginning of these proceedings, are people confused in the chat? Is this the defense? Is this the prosecution? I asked you to put in your name. You say professional writer. You're a member of the defense. If you would add that to, I think we're too deep into it now, but I just want to remind people, this is now the defense. Mr. Snyder, you may continue. Again, be mindful of the time. You also have another defense attorney who will be joining.
Yeah.
So please proceed.
How much time do we have left, Your Honor?
Well, excuse me?
How much time is left?
You've got about another 10 minutes. Another 10 minutes total.
I can say what I need in 5.
Okay, so you've got another 5 minutes, Mr. Snyder. And, you're muted, sir. You're muted. You're muted.
Am I muted?
No, you're not muted now. Okay. Please proceed.
Well, let me sum this up when I say that we have been dropping Easter eggs for the fans in every film. I contend that the image at the end of The Last Jedi of the little boy staring out of a garage, holding a broomstick, pretending he's a Jedi, imagining being a part of the Resistance, is one of the most beautiful moments and beautiful images in all of Star Wars. And littered throughout this franchise are things like that, our love letters to the fans. We have attempted from the very beginning to do right by the fandom. Did we go wrong thanks to the saboteur, Rian Johnson, who let us off of a cliff that we could not come back from? And the saboteur, J.J. Abrams, who could not acknowledge any of the positive things that happened in The Last Jedi and bring them forward to the third film. But these are mistakes that we did not make, that were made by people who were supposed to be watching this franchise's back. Finally, I want to acknowledge Rogue One, Andor, the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and the fact that Solo wasn't that bad. Saboteurs, Chris Lord and Miller, they were about to terminate Dark Fate, that mother effer, and we saved it all from going. So, final
Solo
thoughts.
lost money though.
We did the best we could.
It costed more to make that movie than they made off of it.
Damn midichlorians. That was George's whole pitch for the next trilogy. He's like, you know, they didn't like midichlorians yesterday. Even more midichlorians tomorrow. And we were like, midichlorians, the fans hate those. And we hid them from everyone so that no one would get hurt by George's crazy ideas for the future. And they were crazy. And we tried to give you something that we think is hopefully a little better than the travesty that would have been the franchise had it stayed in the hands of one George Lucas. Thank you.
Mr. Foghorn, Mr. Snyder, thank you so much. I was about to object to some of that, and then I realized I'm the judge, and that's not my role necessarily. But I thank you for your impassioned debate. We will conclude with Mr. March's presentation. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. We're going to conclude with Mr. March's presentation, and then Mr. Drinker may cross-examine. Mr. March, you have the floor.
Look, I don't have to remind Your Honor what it was like back in 2008, 2010, when the division of this Star Wars base. I think a lot of our audience doesn't know this, but I do believe you were even involved in a particular project called The People versus George Lucas, where the fans got together and put a movie putting George Lucas and his vision on trial. Now, it's all available out there for the people to go.
I don't know if he is, but he feels like a lawyer to me.
Our client Disney came in and bought into that, and the one thing we knew going in, that the one thing all the fans seemed to agree at that time was they didn't want to see George Lucas. So we went out and got ourselves a great director, or we thought at the time, who had just relaunched Star Trek to relaunch Star Wars. He did a great job. He made $2.1 billion. We were very happy.
That's
and then we released Rogue One. And I got to say, we finally delivered for you. We gave you Star Wars. We made the Empire look evil. We gave all this stuff to you guys, and people were actually loving it. And we thought we were on the right way. But we did get a lot of criticism from the fan base saying, you've just basically remade The Force Awakens. So we went out and got ourselves another auteur director, and his script was the complete opposite of Star Wars. So we said, you know what? We're going to go out there and we're going to give you the complete opposite of Star Wars, and we'll see what happens. And then we got a lot of new fans, but a lot of hate. So, and then we went back to J.J. Abrams for the third one, and people hated that. And the fans are very hard to make happy. We went and got Ron Howard,
an
Oscar-winning
it's the fans'
director,
fault.
a man who made Apollo 13, to come in and fix Solo. And I will say, it's my favorite Star Wars movie. Empire is the best, but this is my personal favorite. And
you like Solo?
we just have to acknowledge you know,
I don't think
mistakes
I've
were
ever
made
met
on our
anybody
part.
like Solo.
But we're not here trying to deliberately kill.
Claim it's their
We're
favorite.
just trying to deliver good stuff. And we have, for every failure we've had, we've also had successes. Like my co-counselor mentioned, we brought in The Mandalorian, 2 seasons. I personally feel the first one is actually pretty weak. The second one is the strongest by far. And because of people who watched it for me, I didn't watch the 3rd season. But I have friends who love it. I have friends who love the Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff. We have people who are buying who are getting into this stuff. We have had misfires. Our client has had misfires. But we also delivered 4
Fans
great
aren't
seasons
that hard to please.
of Rebels. And
We
I
just
think everyone
want
should go out and watch
stuff
that.
to make logical sense
And
within the
in words
realm of the actual
prosecution
story
about Andor,
itself.
I will directly quote him.
You know,
Andor
don't break
is
the
pretty
rules of your
So,
own story.
Thank you.
Of your own world.
That ends my.
It makes no sense. And just doing it for whatever reason you want
Judge,
to.
you're,
That don't make. I don't like that. I agree
Thank
completely
you,
with what
Mr.
you're
March,
saying there, Casey.
and thank you, Mr. Ng. Mr. Drinker, you may now cross-examine the defense argument. You may also bring in. We do have our witness here, our surprise witness, Mr. Lucas.
There we go.
You have the floor, Mr. Drinker.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Snyder for his impassioned argument on behalf of the prosecution. I very much appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for his work. I will have to say, though, unfortunately, the defense's entire argument is inadmissible in this case on the grounds that at no point, at any point during their entire extremely lengthy diatribe did they ever mention the word lore or even touch upon the subject. Therefore, everything they said is completely irrelevant to this case. And
Objection, Your Honor. The very first thing I said
Oh, he
was
does
that
periodically.
It was asked by the fans to adjust the lore that was being adjusted by George Lucas. He began the adjustment of the lore. We just continued. We tried to adjust it back to a place that people would love. It's not our fault that they didn't.
Let's settle this right now, Mr. Lucas. You've heard the prosecution and defense. Can you help us with this one?
To be honest, I'm quietly a little bit confused as to who is prosecuting and who is defending. The thing is, I don't think this is a case of, George Lucas did it bad, so Disney is off the hook. I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, it's not my position to argue one side or the other. I am like the Force. I have a dark side and a light side, so I can respond either way. The thing is that the problem is that my lore that I created was mine to do with as I saw fit.
Exactly.
And the problem with that was that the reaction from the prequels was not very good, at least not as much as I had hoped. So naturally, I wanted to sell the whole damn thing. What they did afterwards, I don't really have a say in, obviously. And I just find it funny that people are arguing over these little things like Mandalorians, or I'm sorry, midichlorians. I get confused by that sometimes. But it's these are all sort of mechanical things that I was coming up with to sort of explain the world that I'd created. And whether you react positively or negatively, you have to admit that when the sequel movies came out, you were begging for Ewoks again. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Mr.
Your Honor.
Lucas.
I have a question
Not
for
wrong.
Mr. Lucas, Your Honor.
Sure, please proceed.
Mr. Lucas, when you wrote the script for Return of the Jedi, and at the end when Emperor Palpatine was blasted by his own Force lightning and thrown down the reactor shaft into the exploding Death Star, did you intend for him to be killed?
Well, I don't, a fall like that probably would decimate many people. I'm not exactly sure as to the outcome from that. I'm sure I could have come up with a better way to bring him back. But, I think that the Force can answer for many questions. And it's a dramatic thing. It's a story thing. I think you have to assume that he was destroyed in that, but who knows? He could have had other clones of himself that he could have jumped into. Who knows? There's many ways that Palpatine could have returned, and I just was confused by the way he did.
Mr. Lucas, members of our jury are referencing an explosion that occurred after Emperor Palpatine fell down the bottomless
Yeah, there was an explosion
chasm.
in that.
Care to
chasm.
explain?
Well, his robes were made of very fire-inducing materials, and I'm sure that was what the explosion was.
His robes caught on fire.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. No further questions.
Plus, Your Honor, you mentioned that it was a bottomless chasm, so he had clearly fallen all the way through and avoided the explosion of the Death Star.
Thank you for that
composure about it.
That theory, Mr. Ng. Mr. Drinker, you've got a few more minutes left if you would like to continue your cross-examination, or you may rest.
So spontaneous combustion of his robes is what that we saw.
Thank you for that. We're going to read some super chat questions and comments from our jury.
No,
and I will
we're
go
not.
through these
We're gonna skip
quickly.
the super chats.
Eric Hansen has become a YouTube member.
And it looks like we're up to the recess part now.
Minutes.
So I'm going to go ahead and take a 2 or 3 minute break here. And we'll come back. I'm going to go get me some more iced coffee. And I encourage you to get up and stretch. Just slap your neighbor with a fish or something. Yeah, exactly. Always need coffee. And so I'm going to go grab me some iced coffee, and I'll be back in maybe about 3 or 4 minutes or so. And then we'll continue on with Star Wars on Trial. So hang tight. Okay, I'm back. So we'll continue on with Star Wars on Trial, and should be finishing up their recess. We'll see what's going on here. I got me some iced coffee. Well, I'm good to go for a
I feel
little
like
while.
Star Wars is very patriarchal, and clothes make the man toxic. Yes, yes. Just because you're a stormtrooper in the Empire doesn't mean you can't look fabulous. The first order of business must be uniform, and uniform doesn't mean it all needs to look the same. Accessorize.
Fabulous.
Long live the matriarchy.
Yes. Accessorize.
Follow these Disney Star Wars story commandments. Thou shalt ignore logic and canon for whimsy and convenience.
Whimsy and convenience.
It was a quiet Wednesday, that May 25. Quiet, that is. Until Star Wars exploded onto the silver screen and changed the course of movie making forever. We all know that story. But fast forward 35 years, when a real empire consumed it, changed it, broke it, woke it. The magic is gone. The myth is gone.
911 operator, what's your emergency? Oh my god, they killed Star Wars!
Yeah, this just makes me
What I was
sad.
trying to do is stay independent so I could make the movies I wanted to make. But at the same time, I was sort of fighting the corporate system, which I didn't like. And I'm not happy with the fact that corporations have taken over the film industry. But now I found myself being the head of a corporation. So there's a certain irony there, is that I have become the very thing that I was trying to avoid, which is basically what part of Star Wars is about. That is Darth Vader. He becomes the very thing that he's trying to protect himself against.
When I got into it, I was more fascinated in just the medium, you know, the fact that it moved, you know, that real childish intrigue of, gosh, look at the thing, it moves, and you know, it became a kind of obsession, I mean, a kind of real desire to watch things move and photograph them.
What
moving.
things? I mean, did you have like? It didn't matter.
It started.
I mean, didn't you have dreams that you wanted to make real, and that's why you wanted to make movies? You know, one gets the image of a filmmaker having these, you know, making a film just so he can realize his fantasies or something.
Well, I don't know. I got into it. I mean, I think of myself as a filmmaker, and I got into an argument once at a film conference with George Cukor, who's really doesn't like the word filmmaker. I mean, he likens it to toy maker. And I think that's a real nice thing. I like being thought of as a toy maker that makes films.
Court is now back in session. Before we move to open debate, I would like our surprise witness, Mr. Lucas. And Mr. Lucas, my understanding is you really have no dog in this fight. But if you care to make any comment on today's proceedings, just to add context, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Before
yeah, sorry, I just got back to the desk. I was checking out the price of Disney stock. Look, I think that the question is that, do you like the direction that Star Wars was going when I was involved, or do you like better the direction that it went after I wasn't? And I think that's the big question. And was the the white slavers, were they responsible for taking it a direction you didn't like? I think they did all they could to sort of eliminate my my needs, and look, that's their prerogative. They paid good money for it. But I think that
unfortunately,
the direction that everything went is their decision, and I think the question is, if you like that direction, then you'll vote for the defense, and if you
personally,
don't like that
I would
direction,
like to have
then
seen
you'll
the direction
vote
that
for the
Lucas
prosecution.
himself
I think
went
it's
to.
very simple.
The poll is
Some
now
people think it
live
may be
in our
boring or
chat.
not, but I
Who do
like
you
the
think
thought
won
of the
today's
wills
argument,
and
the defense
explain
for the
deeper
prosecution.
lore about the
And now we
Force.
will continue with open debate of count 5.
Anyway, here we go. Back into it.
The floor is now open.
Okay, I'd like to
open
start.
debate.
Look, I have a ton of books from the expanded universe that I can reference. Every single, except for the hyperspace thing, and I will personally admit, it's really stupid, but it looked cool on the screen, and I liked it at the moment. But every single one of the force powers used otherwise, except for, I think, force teleportation, I can find an example of it in expanded universe. And Disney was well within their rights to take, and they made it clear from the beginning that they were going to reach into the expanded universe and take ideas they like and then put them into play. And frankly, like, there's a Kevin J. Anderson book. He has one Jedi who is a brand new initiate throw 12 Star Destroyers across a solar system.
Your Honor, if I may as well,
Like,
the basis
force healing has been a thing in every video. I just want to finish off. The force healing has been a thing in every video game, and in the role-playing games, and in the novels, and in the comics. So that one, like, that was something they legitimately took, and was not a surprise. I think was for the casual moving audience, the casual Star Wars fan, it was not. It was a shock. But a lot of times things were happening, and for those of us who were a bit more into it.
Well, first off, I think I have an argument here with what he just said about all the video games. That is not true. Because I know, like, for example, now this is a really older game, but Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. In that game, you heal yourself not with the Force, but with med packs. So it's like, I don't remember, it's been so long ago since I played that game, if you even get the ability to do Force heal. But I do know that the vast majority of that game, I remember not using the Force to heal my character during the game, but to use med packs. So I don't know if he's correct about that. Obviously, he doesn't look like he's much of a gamer either, to be honest with you. So anyway, just my 2 cents worth there. That's Penguin Thoughts. Those are free.
It was not surprising at all, and it was actually like, oh, you are going to use some of the expanded universe stuff. Nice.
Well, I think the problem is that they decanonized it, and so it's not technically admissible as.
No,
there you go.
That's just something you keep saying. We reserve the right to do whatever we want with the canon or not use the canon. And Your Honor, sir, the things that this series is basing all of its characters on are ultimate giant myth types. The Obi-Wan character, the wise old man who knows more than he's letting on. These Jedi figures. These come from real world monks and wise men on this planet, and the basis of things that they have been able to do: communicate with people through large distances, leave their bodies.
Yeah, but were they doing? Were they able to do it from when they were a child?
Lifting rocks and
I don't think so.
Providing electricity from thin air. This is stuff that ancient wise men can learn to begin to do on this planet. All we have done, our clients, is amplify the parameters to which those things can be done. And I understand the fandom is not thrilled with the level to which we turned it. We turned it up to 11, and they wanted it at 10.
Okay. Do you think the favored tactic of doing one sentence explanations for complex ideas is a good tactic? For example, how did Maz Kanata recover Luke Skywalker's original lightsaber?
Yeah, unfortunately,
and present it to late, because like that's a pretty big question considering how he lost it.
My understanding, some of that was
but he was referring to. I agree with that completely. The X-Men Storm could do that.
That I have to read a source book to know what's happening in the movie.
But he was saying that using Lucasfilm got their inspiration from people on this planet that could actually do that
they
stuff.
They brought in Rian Johnson because of there was a lot of fan people who didn't think he did a great job, and they were saying, we don't want you to just recreate the original trilogy.
But I agree
again,
with what you said, that Tracy.
even though it was the plan. So they brought in Rian Johnson.
I know
have
you were.
boatloads of friends who really love how he deconstructed the universe.
I just need to add something here. His name is Ryan. It's just Ryan. It's not Rian. It's just Ryan.
I thought it was Rian.
No, it's Ryan. He spells it differently.
Right. Yeah, he just spells
it. He's doing
just like it's like how you spell Wookiee differently. It's
the thing is, he subverts your expectation even with his very name. That's
right.
That's how hardcore this guy is.
But what I'm trying to get back to
With
with
his
this is
name.
that, so when someone who I'm going to take it, you didn't read the Zahn trilogy.
Excuse me, Mr. Marks.
You can probably take that as a given, yes.
Okay. Bringing Thrawn out of that and putting him into Rebels, they did a really good, respectful job of it.
Yeah.
Someone who's read those books.
I think so. To a
Well, I
certain
mean, that
extent.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
I guess I'm more concerned with the lore of the movies following on to the movies that that succeed.
I did like Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah, that's I think where we start to fall apart
not
a
as
little
much
bit.
Rebels as I did
particularly,
Clone Wars,
I
but
was
still.
very interested to learn who Snoke was, where he came from, what his true objectives were, how he got the Force powers that he did, what he's seen, what he's experienced in his life. But I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, those.
Yeah.
That's
He
the
was a
thing. Like
clone,
you just
that's
brought
the
there by
answer
Snoke.
that Rian
They never
Johnson,
really
the
explain
saboteur,
anything. They just go here.
He
take it.
eventually chose for that. But there were many good choices in that film as well.
Yeah. Like I can't think of any, but like I'm sure they exist.
Asking the rebel children, the image of the Rebel Alliance, the symbol that fans have been tattooing on themselves for ages. We love the fans. We did the best we could.
Yeah, I really like the bit where Luke gets reunited with his lightsaber and then tosses it over his shoulder and walks away. That's good stuff.
He obviously didn't want it anymore. It was with Kanata.
It was, yeah. He just wanted her to take it back. I like when Ray beat his ass. That was very satisfying to see.
You guys should have expected him to do that. It was not a weird choice. He didn't have it anymore. He didn't like it anymore.
There is something to be said about basically tossing it aside in the sense that I don't need this anymore. That I've gone beyond with my powers of the Force, beyond just needing to wield a lightsaber anymore. I can defeat a dozen AT-ATs with Force projection.
Yes, it represents the trappings of commercialism. Who needs this trendy thing?
I think that would have been cool if Luke truly was powerful with the Force at that point in the movie, but he'd cut himself off from the Force at that point, so he had no Force powers. Really.
The Force.
It was interesting though because apparently he cut himself off from the Force, but he could also do like Force pulls and so on, telekinesis. But yeah, it's it's an interesting world that Ryan created. The rules are fluid, I guess. Things can just come and go.
There have been other examples in the expanded universe where people cut themselves off from the Force.
But can they still use the Force while they're cut off from the Force, but then they really reconnect?
Well, I think that he meant something a little different when I think he meant he was more in like Yoda's kind of retreat, trying to keep the dark side of the Force from finding him, is the interpretation I take from that.
Let me ask the panel this question, but regarding the Force is such a fundamental idea and concept in the first 6 movies and in the extended universe.
Yeah, the
do
Force
you
is
believe
actually,
that
in my opinion, a
Disney
character
Lucasfilm
in
today
Star Wars universe
adequately evolved the Force, has adequately evolved it, grown it, used it in a way that was meaningful, I would say, to fans in the first 6?
In
a
sense,
question.
they did evolve it. I think they did do some good work with it. But
do they evolve it in a meaningful way where we understood more about it as opposed to what it does?
If you watch Rebels, yes. The stuff that happens in Rebels, especially in the exploration of the Force, because you have a longer period of time, you have 4 seasons of 13 episodes each, you get to build. They really did do a good job of expanding that, especially with and showing off the Force powers.
But you're talking about a TV
Rebels
series.
is a continuation of the Clone Wars.
Okay, well, you're talking about a TV series, and my question now then is, did what you like about what they brought to in Rebels, did that expand itself into the sequels?
Yes, to a limited extent. But
I've got a question about Rey's parentage. So in The Force Awakens, it's kind of implied that she has some parents of some significance based on the flashbacks that she has. Then in TLJ, Last Jedi, we find out that her parents were nobodies, apparently, according to Kylo Ren. Then when we get to The Rise of Skywalker, we find out that they apparently were somebody. They were, in fact, the son of Palpatine, who, for whatever reason, ran away from his father and got exiled on a planet, and then they got killed, and Rey was left behind. Do you think that's a satisfying and consistent explanation for her origins?
Okay, looking at that particular situation, is the dark side is lying to you? Like, who is telling you this? It's coming from Kylo Ren and basically the equivalent of Yoda's cave, or the cave on Dagobah. I always took that personally. I was like, that can't be right. That's total BS. This is the dark side of the Force trying to taunt her to give up her parentage in that way. And maybe that was Ryan's interpretation, but that certainly was mine, and I know a lot of other fans feel that way. And yes, it was a bit of a payoff with Palpatine being Rey's grandfather in that thing. My guess on why he would flee is that probably that he possesses his children as a way to continue his existence.
Why was the dark side of the Force lying to her? Did it not like her?
The side of the Force always lies.
Okay.
That's the nature of evil, right? It's trying to tempt her away from that kind of future.
In terms of things like the, and I'm quoting the movie directly here, the 10,000
I'm not sure what to
Star
think about
Destroyers
this line
armed
of
with Death
question.
Star cannons that Palpatine had hidden away on Exegol. Do you think that's a believable chain of events? That he had these 10,000 Star Destroyers with
I don't know about that
hundreds of millions of crew
That
members.
always did really kind of
just
like
sitting around
not that
doing
happy.
nothing for 30 years, just waiting. And then ready to
Does
burst out
anyone
of the
else
ice.
from the defense want to defend that?
I don't mean to take us to a different place, but I really think that this is all besides the point. I see people in the chat questioning the credulity of some of these arguments, but I really think, and I mean this when I say this, that people just kind of take things the wrong way. And this notion that Kathleen Kennedy is some sort of fire-breathing dragon, it's the same notion that Donald Trump is Hitler. He's not Hitler. He's not going to start the next Reich. Is he maybe a sexist and racist on levels that he can't begin to understand? Yeah, probably. But is he Hitler? No, this is silly. And are we, Disney Star Wars, an evil empire purposely trashing your dreams? Or are we attempting to respond in a relative manner based on what you're saying? We made remade A New Hope in The Force Awakens to re-inspire a new generation. And what did the fans say? The fans said, this is derivative, this is predictable. And then we took hundreds of meetings with different writers and directors and producers. And when Rian Johnson came into the room and he blew our minds by having Luke throw the lightsaber over his shoulder, we thought, this is exactly what the fans have asked us for. And we tried.
When you did that, I took a sip.
Did we fail in lots of middling ways as we tried to correct our ESG score and get more money into the franchise so we could keep making Star? Yes, we did. But we did it all in good faith, and there is evidence littered everywhere that tells that story.
I do have a question for Mr.
Just a moment.
You didn't really answer
Mr.
Drinker's
Trump
question.
is not on trial here today, I'll say, but I do have a question for Mr. Lucas. What were your interactions with Mr. Johnson and Mr. Abrams? Did you have interactions with them in their planning out of the sequels?
We didn't talk about any of the work that they're going to do. I met both of them briefly, and I basically wished them good luck.
The reason I ask is, wonder if you might put us in touch with Mr. Abrams and Mr. Johnson, because I would like to bring both of them to this courtroom in future discussions of counts. we will be bringing Mr. Ryan Johnson, if I could pronounce it per you've met the man, and Mr. J.J. Abrams will be coming to court to get involved in these proceedings, because I think it's absolutely necessary that we get the full picture. And thank you, Mr. Lucas, for your attendance. Would you like anything to add?
Well, the thing is, like I said before, I have nothing to do with this Disney stuff, and they fully intended that I would have nothing to do with it. And that's fine. They paid their money. They get what they want. But, you know, for all the fans who stayed with us year after year after the first 6 movies, I think that they had a certain expectation of what to get from Star Wars movie. And, you know, perhaps I wasn't able to provide them everything they wanted over the space of years. But they still, you know, made our sequel movies a lot of money. And I think that the fact that that the Disney folks continued and also made a lot of money just means that Star Wars makes money. And apparently it makes money no matter what you do to it.
Care to elaborate?
Well, I think it's very obvious that they made their movies with their choice of characters, and it appealed to a certain aspect of the audience. They made a bunch of money.
Mr. Lucas, quick question for you.
Yeah.
On the basis that Solo was actually a $77 million write-off for Disney, how do you feel about that from a financial point of view?
Yeah,
well, I think
they
just
money.
Released it at the wrong time. I mean, you know, they only had a series of months after they'd released their previous movie. I think if they had been a little patient with it and maybe released it a year later, everything would have been fine. But I think they were a little too anxious to get all the product out there that they'd paid for.
Any other questions for Mr. Lucas as we...
Oh, I have a question I've always wanted to ask him since about, what is it, 98 when the recuts came out? Mr. Lucas, who shot first, Han or Greedo?
Oh. Well, I mean, you can see the movie. You know, look at the movie and see who shoots first.
Objection, Your Honor. Force him to answer the question.
I did.
Mr. Lucas, they're not satisfied with your response. Can you please elaborate?
There is look at any version of Star Wars that is out there available, and you will see who shoots first. I can't explain it any clearer.
Who shot first?
Either you watch the movie and enjoy it, or you don't. But I think anything else is just McClunky.
Mr. Lucas, if you were in charge of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, would you have based it around the original trilogy, or would you have based it around the sequel trilogy?
Good question, Drinker.
What Star Wars Galaxy's Edge?
Your Honor, there was no sequel trilogy for him to base on.
Excuse me, I'll allow it. Mr. Drinker can ask this question. Mr. Lucas, please continue.
I just want to know what Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is. Is that a movie?
So it is a theme park at Disney World, based around Star Wars.
Okay. What's the question?
So if you had a choice, because, well, hypothetically, you can theme this theme park around different eras of Star Wars. So you could theoretically base it around the prequels, or you could base it around the original trilogy, or you could base it around the sequels. What would be your preference? What do you think the fans would enjoy the most?
Well, I would probably, run a questionnaire to fandom and see which one they would like the best. But honestly, if I owned the Star Wars franchise right now, I would probably theme it in the one where I made the most money, which I think is what they did.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
Your Honor, may I ask George a question as well?
Please, Mr. Snyder, continue.
Sir, you've often talked in terms about selling your intellectual property to Disney. Can you elaborate on the atmosphere at the time that you did, in fact, sell your company? And isn't it true that you were not exactly beloved by the fandom at that point?
Well, I think that would just sort of depend on which fandom you ask.
No, not people in your immediate circle who like to worship you and hang on everything you say. I mean, all of those darn trolls on the internet who represent the geek culture media. Were they in love with your decision making when you decided to shelve the original versions of the trilogy and not allow anybody to see them ever again because you deemed it so?
Objection, Your Honor. This is speculation.
I think that
Mr. Lucas is not to put himself into the mindset of the fan base.
I'll allow it. I'll allow speculation.
I can simply
okay.
I'll allow it.
I'd like to answer the question.
Yes, Mr. Lucas, please.
I deny the premise of your question, because the question is that these were my movies, and I decide what happens to them. The fans can rent them to watch them, but they're still mine. They're my creations.
Right.
And I took responsibility for that. But when the question came to whether or not Disney wanted to purchase my property, they have every right to do what they wish with it, whether or not I agree with them. So that's just the way it goes. And I think that everyone should just relax a little bit. And if you like something, like it. If you don't. But it's luckily I don't have to deal with this anymore.
Mr. Lucas, a question from the jury. If you could go back, would you sell Star Wars again after seeing what they did to it?
Well, sure. I don't really have any regrets. I might have been a little disappointed with their attitude toward me right after the sale, but the life is too short to have regrets. You just need to push forward and do the best you can. And I'm looking forward to the opening of my museum near USC. And there's going to be a lot of things that people may or may not enjoy there. So, I'm moving forward.
I didn't know there was going to be a museum open.
Mr. Lucas, I want to know, how many hours a day do you swim in all that money that Disney gave you?
Well, that's just silly. You can't swim in money.
I beg to differ.
You can lie on top of it. You can wallow around in it.
Well, I feel like if you stack it high enough, they gave you enough to be able to at least fill in a swimming pool full of cash.
Oh, man.
Well, unfortunately, a big chunk of it was in Disney stock. So.
Oh, yes, you're right. Okay, a jacuzzi.
Not looking too good these days, but no, I'm fine, and I swim when I want to.
Mr. Lucas, if you were able to get Lucasfilm at a discount, would you be tempted to buy it back?
I don't know. It'd have to be a huge discount.
It's looking that way right now.
It's looking that way right now.
Well, we'll see what happens at the end of June.
Your Honor, relevancy.
We have only one chance to ever get George Lucas on the stand. I think we got have a reason to get a wider field, if you agree, Judge.
What I'd like to hear is final arguments from everyone before we actually take a look at the poll to see who won today, the prosecution or the defense. But your final arguments, final exchanges, again, open debate. Who would like to go first?
I have something to say.
Dip an ice coffee,
please,
baby.
Mr. Relic.
In defense of and Ray Skywalker,
Kennedy.
I'm just going to speak from the heart. When I was a little girl, I never saw someone that looked like me on the big screen. And if there had been a character like Ray for me to look up to, it would have literally saved my life.
You don't look like a little girl to me.
a career of hanging out with the boys. She had her big shot to step out on her own and to show all the little girls in the world that you can be anything. You can be a superhero, you can be a Jedi, even a mermaid.
None of those things are real.
That's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Relic.
Trauma.
Okay.
Excuse me? You are blocked.
Continuing with your final arguments before we go to the results for today's count discussion.
I would like to go last, Your Honor.
Yeah. So, Your Honor, I believe that many mistakes have been made and many mistakes have been pointed out today. But the reality is, the charge is having broken the lore. And I am not so certain that we have indeed broken the lore. I do believe we fixed the shooting through the spaceship with that one line of dialogue that it was 1 in a million. It's never going to happen again. You know, sometimes freak things happen. And it was a freak thing. But as far as what we've done to the Force, Your Honor, we have amplified it perhaps a bit too much. A bit too much, admittedly, a bit too amplified for people's liking. But we did not break the Force. And in future films, we can tone that down. We'll just tone it down a little bit. We're going to just pull it down to there. Just right. Perfect. Just the same way George Lucas learned that he needed to pull his Jedi ballerina stuff down. There's a learning curve with Star Wars. George learned in the learning curve. You have some success, and then you have some failure. And we've had some success, and we've had some failure. And I would just love you to remember moments like the Andor series, moments like Rogue One, moments like the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian before the saboteur Jon Favreau screwed us in the behind. These things paint a picture of a healthy franchise that could have been if the fans had not taken everything so personally.
It's not the fans' fault.
I rest.
Thank you. Who else would like to go next?
I could go.
Please.
He is animated.
Well, Your Honor, the defense have spoken passionately on a wide variety of subjects, none of which have anything to do with the lore of Star Wars, really. But they have been entertaining nonetheless, and I appreciate their contributions to this discussion.
I feel unsafe.
Okay. I retract my existence.
Thank you, Your Honor. We appreciate him retracting his existence. Can we move on?
However, I believe that the facts of the matter speak for themselves in this case. The lore of Star Wars has been consistently and repeatedly and forcefully violated without any preamble or without any preparation of any sort by Disney. The results are a bloody and raw mess of violated canon and lore, and unfortunately, it falls to the drinker to clean it up. And I believe the prosecution has done that today. I rest my case, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Drinker. Any other comments from the defense?
Yeah. Look, almost everything the drinker brought up, I did point out was available in the EU, and Disney had the full right to bring it into play, and they have done so. I get it. We're all up against the wall here, but I think the one thing I really object to is the fact that the idea that Star Wars itself is dead. Star Wars is not going to die just because of Disney. Star Wars is bigger than Disney. It's bigger than George Lucas. That's how it works. I don't care what he keeps saying over there. This belongs to every one of us and every one of the fans and everyone who gets up every day and writes a fan article or does something a little bit different, makes their video. I just spent earlier today watching People versus George Lucas, and I really recommend that people do that to understand that this is more than just us. And in the defense of even Disney, look, I'm willing to forgive even The Last Jedi because I think Andor is that good. Okay, really, everyone needs to go out and watch that show. Disney, it's like the last season of Picard for Star Trek fans. This thing is what we really needed. And like when Disney gave me that whole prison breakout episode with Andy Serkis calling This Way Out, that was one of the best parts that I've seen for Star Wars, and it didn't have anything to do with George Lucas beyond his initial concept.
Your Honor,
and I just want to say there's one way out, and it's acquittal. Thank you.
Mr. Relic, you had a quick comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, I have some problems with the original trilogy, and I think a lot of those problematic things were remedied in the Disney Star Wars. I think it strains credulity that there are no gay people in space in the original trilogy. And in the new trilogy, we get a ton of gay space people. And,
it's important.
I just don't understand why that even matters.
Different ethnicities. I mean, Star Wars for everybody.
I just need to pipe in here a little bit. That your statement is false. All the stormtroopers are gay.
Oh, see, thank you.
Nice one, George.
Well, there you go.
Thank you, George.
We didn't even have to let you know. Never mind.
Well, that's a change.
You don't see me complaining there's no
Mr. Relic,
penguins
you may
in Star
complete your
Wars.
statements.
And that's all I had, Your Honor.
Okay.
I think the defense rests.
Yeah, thank you. We are going to momentarily look at the results of our poll. I will read some of the comments from the jury. Linjack for €10 says, objection, any reference to the old EU.
That's not how it worked. Repeatedly.
Let's
there you go,
see if we can
You
get
know,
to...
Your Honor, it just dawned on me why the stormtroopers couldn't
It's
shoot
open
straight.
debate still.
Wow.
Where does he read the verdict at?
Mr. Lucas.
Not the verdict, but the...
Well, that's not really true.
Result of the poll
the
today.
money doesn't change you. It changes how people act around you.
Fair. The defense is acting like Disney had no say and...
You've got like Luke referring to Darth Vader.
Also, why is the defense in the majority actually trying to escape, thus making her a coward?
I'm trying to see...
interesting speculation.
He's got the poll in here eventually.
2%.
There it
Defense,
is.
7%. Disney took balance of the force literally, implying a necessary equal amount of good and evil, meaning the Jedi would have to commit evil acts in order to keep in balance. Angry Yeti TV, Angry Yeti TV for $2. It's pronounced Ruined Johnson. And last comment here, Arthur Brown for $5. Was the script for The Last Jedi not written before filming? How could Disney have been surprised by the events of The Last Jedi? Did nobody review the script? I believe that's been well documented. I don't know if Mr. Lucas has a comment on that.
I had nothing to do with that.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. It's time to look at the results of our poll.
All right. There we go.
And who do you think was the most convincing today? Prosecution, 92%. Defense, 7%. Poll complete with 858 votes. Care to comment?
Our jury remains unbiased and impartial.
Well, that's not unanimous, right? So basically,
That's only 99%.
That's like a hung jury.
I feel like justice was done
attacking
today.
a white woman in Georgia has a better chance.
Well, this is not a verdict. It's just the poll of how
had a better chance of
the
getting
jury or
a fair
us,
trial than our client. That
when this
being
was
said,
streaming live,
I now know what it
shows-
would like to be General
Yeah, it's
Goring's
still a hung jury.
lawyer at Nuremberg, and even he got a defense.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up today. I want to thank the mods. I want to thank Ms. Pete Coffee, Lord Thoth, Grittering Masters, The Chicago Box, and Mexican Iron Man. For people, for the attorneys.
Oh, wait a minute. He's going
can
to
you tell
show
people
some
how
Mr.
they
Blackwood
can find
stuff.
you
So
while we look at some
I'll
of the
let that
sketch
show
art
as well.
that was done by Mr. Blackwood, and we'll have final words from Mr. Lucas after that. Where can people find you, the Spy Guy?
People can find me at my locals page. You can contact me through there. I'm hoping I have been neglecting my YouTube channel in favor of
George
finishing
Lucas.
off my first novella, which I intend to publish next month. So look for me there. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
Oh, where can you find me? Well,
Boba
just
Fett
check out,
on
I
a bottle
do
of drinker's
podcast
drinking.
every week, every Wednesday. There's a new one coming out today. On just
Well, it looks
inside
like Boba Fett.
commentary.
Maybe
I
it's
write
not.
comic
I don't
books.
know.
I work in the industry. I'm a voiceover actor. I make music. I do a lot of different things. And you can, and I do mean everything that I said here today. You know, Chris had put out
I think
a
that
call
was
that
one
they
of
need
the
defense
defense
attorneys, and I do
people.
have some positive things to say about Disney Star
So is
Wars.
that,
and
yeah,
if you
he's
want
showing
a
the
more
defense lawyers.
realistic view of some of the things that I think about, say, The Last Jedi. I did a few episodes on it on my podcast, which is called Coolest Geek Alive. And just so you know, coolest to me means being a nice guy, being cool to people, opening doors for people, being a kind man. I try to be cool to everyone, not a jerk to everyone. For people who want definitions. Anyway, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
And I'll remind everyone, the links to all of these are in the description of this episode. Mr. Relic?
I have a YouTube channel. You can find it at Punks Not Dead. And I'm at Mortal Relic on Instagram.
Mr. Drinker, do you have a YouTube channel?
A little one, yeah.
A little
yeah, it's
one,
just
my
called The
foot.
Critical Drinker. I don't know. You might have heard of it. But I just want to say that, like, honestly, I've had a great time with you guys. The defense, I think you guys were given a tough job today, and you all performed admirably. And respect to all of you. You were great guys to stream with. You were very entertaining, and thank you.
Thanks, Drinker.
Thank you.
So much, sir.
And Mr. Lucas, any final words from you? We hope that you return, as well as Ryan Johnson and Mr. Abrams as well.
Well, I just wanted to say, Judge, this is enjoyable for me. I always like hearing what the fans think, and it's been a fascinating journey since 1974 when I was writing the first script, all the way through till now. Who knows what the future will hold? But I think that the great thing is that Star Wars incites very passionate feelings among fans on any
does.
side of the argument. And I just... Oh, what was that?
What was that?
It's good to be able to participate in something like this and lend my voice when I can. So just thanks for the opportunity.
Like somebody eating potato chips.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Who knows? You may somehow return to these proceedings. A final comment here from Arthur Brown for Fives, because considering what they were defending, the defense did a good job. Very entertaining, I must say.
All right. That's it for today. So, I'm definitely interested in any type of final thoughts you may have on this, on count 5. If you do, go ahead and give those comments down there in the description of the video, below the description of the video. All the information and everything for Film Threat Channel and the original video of this and the court documents and stuff are all in the description again, as well as any information in there that I felt like I needed to add to it as well. So anyway, I'm not going to keep rambling on. I tend to do that as a little penguin. I tend to just kind of just ramble on about things, especially when it comes to like my favorite IPs like Star Wars and Star Trek and things like that. You can get me talking about that stuff real easy. But nevertheless, we are going to pick this up next week, same Bat Penguin time, same Bat Penguin channel, with count 6, which count 6 of is the blatant disregard and threatening of fans. That is something they have definitely done, that Lucasfilm and Disney has. nevertheless, that's count number 6. So anyway, without further ado, you should be here. You got to add your wolf commentary. Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate Tracy you being here, and anybody else that's lurking or watch this video later on. I encourage you to come back and watch it if you like it. I'd ask for you to just put a like and maybe even subscribe. If not, I thank you for your time. And as always, I'm the crazy little Star Wars penguin named WhataboutBob, and I'm going to head out to the Millennium Falcon, and hopefully the hyperdrive's still working. Anyway, may the fish be with you.